Welcome to another Tempo Storm Meta Snapshot breakdown. The meta has settled following the recent balance changes and the Masters Tour. New decks have popped up, archetypes have been refined, old kings have fallen, and new challengers have risen to the throne. Let's find out what the ladder has in store for us. And remember, if you want to be kept up to date with the latest and greatest in ranked Hearthstone, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Without further ado, let's dive right into Tier 1. Leading off the top tier in this meta is Rush Warrior. This archetype hit the ground running with Forged in the Barrens, thanks to the powerful rush cards introduced into the game, as well as some of the late game finishing tools the classic set provided. On top of all of this, the large threats from the new Warrior rank spell Conditioning has helped push the archetype over the top. Rush Warrior also has the ability to snowball a game right out of the gates with Crab Rider, which has proven to be quite a threat in recent weeks. This deck is a well-rounded archetype that may take some games to get used to, but trust us, it'll pay off. The deck is versatile and threatening to even the best players. This archetype boasts a good matchup against most of the meta, but its best matchup is against Miracle Rogue. Valeera struggles to deal with a lot of the snowbally minions that Warrior has at its disposal, and as such, the Warrior player can often run away with the game. However, Garrosh struggles against Control Priest due to how easily Priest players can stave off his pressure while healing. Next up in Tier 1 is Aggro Paladin. Despite the Sword of the Fallen nerf, Paladin has found its footing with this aggressive shell. This deck is one of the best to get fast games in, so if you're looking for a quick climb to legend, then this is the deck for you. Generally, you'll aim to take board early and use buffs like Hand of Adal, Blessing of Kings, and Blessing of Authority to bolster your threats and to push damage, while closing the game out with your army of cheap minions alongside Conviction. Aggro Paladin is a good archetype for those who favor the Smork. Its best matchup comes from the other aggressive decks on the ladder, such as Aggro Hunter. It's pretty easy to take board from them, and once you have it, you can buff your threats to prevent them from retaking it. Paladin's worst matchup at the moment is Secret Rogue. Not only do they build annoying boards of secrets thanks to Shadow Jeweler Hanar, but Blackjack Stunner is a real threat on its own as it can effectively delete any of your buffs. The last deck we'll be taking a look at in Tier 1 this time around is Control Priest. While annoying to play against, this archetype is easily one of the top performing ones for ladder at the moment. The only issue is that Control Priest can be quite difficult to play at times. This deck demands its pilots to make numerous decisions based around the deck's random card generation and removal spell targeting. On top of this complexity, if the decklist features Mindrender Lucia, that's just another critical decision to make, making the archetype much more complicated than the other Tier 1 decks. Luckily, Priest is a great meta call, so it's truly worth the time you'll invest into learning it. Control Priest has a good matchup against Rush Warrior, but it also performs well against other board-centric decks such as Token Druid. Priest has the ability to clear boards from hand with ease, and if the Priest ever gets ahead on board, the game is usually in the bag for them. As for bad matchups, as one might expect, Priest tends to struggle with super interactive face decks such as Aggro Rogue. Unless the Priest has Acidic Swamp Ooze in the deck, the Priest will have to high roll pretty heavily to find a win. Now that we've taken a look at the top 3 decks in the meta, we want to dive into Tier 2 to see what decks are leading the charge there. As usual, we'll take a look at the 3 best decks within the second tier, but you can find the rest of the tier and the entire meta snapshot at tempostorm.com. Now, on to the top of Tier 2. Leading off Tier 2 is another Paladin archetype, Secret Paladin. This build is similar to the aggressive Paladin found within Tier 1, but this build opts into playing the recently nerfed Sword of the Fallen alongside a secret package. The secret package allows the Paladin to curve out through the early game, and honestly, it's pretty annoying to deal with. How many times have you had your 1-mana spell convert your hand into demons from Shadow Council? We know it's happened to us a bunch, and we are fed up with oh my yog. Secret Paladin offers a fun experience for you while creating a disruptive plan for your opponent, making it a pleasure to play. Secret Paladin performs best against decks that struggle when they lose board, such as Aggro Rogue or Token Druid. As for bad matchups, Control Priest and Rush Warrior tend to do well against you, as they can easily deal with your boards and threats, leaving you to sadly pick up the pieces. Next up in Tier 2 is Token Druid. This is by far the best performing Druid archetype, and it saw little to no changes from the previous builds following rotation. While Druid is a bit sad without Savage Roar, that limitation has definitely been good for the game to limit the burst that the deck has. Besides, Druid would probably be broken if it had access to more reach. Token Druid floods the board aggressively and closes the game out with board buffs such as Arbor Up or Power of the Wild. If they lose board, they tend to struggle to find a footing, but Token Druid can use cards such as Gibberling or Glowfly Swarm to mount a comeback. This deck does well against a lot of the other aggressive decks, as they won't be able to deal with the wide boards easily. Sadly, Token Druid struggles against control decks such as Priest, as they just wipe your board repeatedly and leave you to weep. The last deck we'll be taking a look at today is Secret Rogue. To the surprise of no one, Valeera continues to perform well in the meta. At first, it looked like Rogue would struggle with the loss of its historically key cards, but the class has found its footing thanks to powerful new cards such as Field Contact. Additionally, Shadow Jeweler Hanar is extremely versatile and very pesky to deal with. A lot of classes struggle to deal with a tempoed out Hanar, allowing you to protect him with a Tree of Secrets. Secret Rogue has a great matchup against both Libram and Aggro Paladin, as you have the tools to stall the game out, the secrets to force them to deviate from their plan, and Blackjack Stunner to answer buffs from Librams or Blessing. Secret Rogue historically has had a rough time against aggressive decks that don't focus on board, leaving Aggro Rogue to be a pretty bad matchup for it. They'll just ignore everything you do, and unless you find a few ice barriers, they're just going to punch you to death. The standard meta is in a surprisingly healthy place following the recent nerfs, but it could still use a few changes to make it more fun and refreshing. Recently, the Blizzard devs stated that we'll be receiving a balance patch sometime during the week of May 10th. The patch will either buff or nerf cards depending on what's needed. Change is always nice. We hope you enjoyed this Meta Snapshot breakdown. If you did, please be sure to subscribe to the channel to be kept up to date with all of our Hearthstone content. We'll have another standard Meta Snapshot releasing about 2 weeks from now, so be sure to check back then. See you next time!